I've always been interested in energy. I've always seen it as the challenge of the 21st century as a young person. So I was always looking at energy, and that's why I studied engineering. I did a module on nuclear in engineering, so at university, but I wasn't particularly sold or hooked at that point. I applied for a number of different grad schemes, mostly in the renewable energy sector, offshore wind, solar farms. But I happened to come across the nuclear graduate scheme, which is a graduate scheme here in the UK. And I got an offer, and that was kind of the start of my journey. So I always knew that energy was a space I wanted to work in. I just didn't know that it would be nuclear.
What was so interesting to you? I mean, you said you've known from an early age that energy was pretty vital to the lifestyle that we all lead. What made you go the light, literally, unintended, the light bulb go off?
Yeah, I think my parents always instilled interest in engineering and things like that. My dad worked in the space sector, which meant that I didn't want to work in space because you don't really
I
want to
love
do
how, like,
what
you
your
talk
parents.
about the space. My dad worked in space. I love that.
I read a lot of new scientists, read a lot of articles about how energy was this big problem. And, 75% of our emissions come from how we produce energy. So if we can solve that, it feels like we're solving the bulk of the challenge when it comes to climate change. I think that was what really sparked it, really, in that I saw it as what we needed to solve this century to have a good, sustainable future. So I was sold from then on, really.
Fantastic. So you got your first job in nuclear, and how was it? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, it was fantastic. The scheme was really well designed. It gave you access to different parts of the sector. And the thing that really pulled me into the grad scheme was this opportunity to start a business and run it for a year. Now, I'd always been interested in running a business in the entrepreneurial space, and I'd never seen a grad scheme offering those,
Very unusual.
yeah, to develop your skills and business in a completely safe environment, right? I've got a salary. It doesn't matter if the business is successful or not. And that was really exciting to me. That business that I started on that grad scheme is the business that I run today. So
That's incredible. What a great start to the world of work and also your future passion.
yeah, absolutely. I feel very blessed to have had that opportunity.
Once you had your idea and you ran your business for a year, did you stay on for much longer at this grad scheme?
Yes. So after a year, the business was not in any position to support me financially for a long time. So I continued working in the nuclear sector for a number of years after that with the business. It was never really intended to be my future career. I knew that there was value in what I was doing. And so I wanted to just see how far I could take that.
So how long has it been from the inception to now a self-sustained business? How long
So
has that been going on?
the company was formed in August 2019.
Congratulations for getting into that maturity and being able to drop the day job to be able to give your full energy into Megawatt. So tell us about Megawatt and how you came up with the idea in the first place.
Yeah, so it started out as basically a communication tool about the energy sector. So you see that often in nuclear, where a lot of people don't understand why do we need nuclear? Why not just build offshore wind or wind turbines or solar farms? Why do we need something like nuclear, which is perceived as more dangerous, more expensive? Why take that risk? So that's how it started off, but we wanted to do it in a fun way. So we developed a card game where you compete against each other to build an electricity grid. You can use fossil fuels, you can use renewables, you can use nuclear, and depending on what you built, different events affect you differently. And we're trying to teach about those advantages and disadvantages through heat waves, floods, carbon tax, things that happen in the real world that then have an effect on your energy system. So it's just, let's make a game that's fun and educational. It's now a program of education for schools. So we have a series of workshops, activities, all focusing on gamification and ethical debates to raise energy literacy and kind of have that spark in young people to be like, oh, energy is quite a cool place to work. I might consider it as a sector. So we've gone from communicating about the importance of nuclear to a more general sort of energy is cool, come and work here. And by the way, these are the different ways that you can produce energy.
What are the most common questions that you receive in response to Megawatt or when people are playing it?
The nature of the interconnectedness of how we produce energy to the resources that we have, the geography of your country, the economics, the climate, the weather. I think that's really not understood. It's seen as this independent thing that operates in its own space, but actually it's so dependent on all these different factors that people don't quite understand. And I think it can be somewhat overwhelming. The way it's approached in the curriculum is very basic. So one of the key things that students have to learn is this a renewable resource or a non-renewable resource? That is one of the most basic questions. When we put nuclear into this equation, where do you think nuclear sits? It's going
What
to
are you
be,
asking me?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, is nuclear renewable or non-renewable?
I mean, nuclear is, I guess, in a bit of a gray zone, isn't it?
Well, exactly. So, and in the curriculum, it's sit as a non-renewable resource. So
Right.
right from the start, as young people, they will see good, wind, solar,
It's
hydro.
very black and white.
Yeah, bad, coal, oil, gas, nuclear, right? And so
Right.
it's quite difficult to the nuance between what is renewable and non-renewable and what that actually means. So we often then introduce what is sustainable and what is unsustainable. So you can have a renewable resource that's unsustainable. For example, biomass. If you're not actually if you're using primary forests as your source of uh, fuel, that is an
Yes.
unsustainable practice.
Sustainable. Yes, that's the key difference, isn't it? How far into the future is this energy source gonna take me? So there is that, I think, the codependency between the
And
different energy sources.
sustainability is not just about one thing. It's about the people working in that space. It's about the resources you use. It's about the impact on the environment. So you can have a renewable resource like solar, but if you have an unsustainable practice on where you source the materials or employment practices, that is no longer a sustainable source of energy. So it's a lot more nuanced and complicated as just a binary renewable and non-renewable. So we can introduce that from the start with our resources and get them to really think about these problems and see how it's a lot more complicated than it seems at first, and get them excited and interested in it, because a lot of young people have quite a lot of climate anxiety, so that they're concerned about the future. But they're often in schools, they're taught about the issues. They're taught about why it's bad, but they're not presented with the solution. And that's our approach with Megawatt. We're not telling you what the solution is. You tell us and justify your answers. That's all we're looking for. So really empowering them to come up with the solutions and feel like they're able to make a difference and change the world.
It's about not oversimplifying and not giving them, spoon feeding them one dimensional or two-dimensional answers: good, bad, brown, green, renewable, rotten, not renewable, but instead fostering that debate and letting them question it and letting them see the full picture and see for themselves how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. So as a result of the activity that you're doing, the work that you're doing with the schools, do you see now more young people wanting to go into energy?
That is ultimately the goal that we're trying to achieve, right? We want to attract and recruit talent. And that starts with what we do with Megawatt, where is that initial inspiration. But it's too early for us to have had really seen that at scale. Every time I go into a school, you'll have 5 kids that are really engaged. They're really interested in what they're doing. They want to know more. What can they now do to use that energy that they have? And
That next step.
that next step. And that's what we're working on now is, how do we work with industry? How do we work with recruiters to identify these people and point them to the next step, the next resources? Perhaps they can do some work experience and really create this funnel where Megawatt is that first step to thinking about, well, energy is actually quite interesting. It's about something I care about. It's a secure future for me. What do I do next? We need to work with the sector to offer those opportunities to young people. So that is what the next few years is going to look like for us. When I started this as a game, I didn't think that
You'll
I
end
was
up in recruitment.
yeah, exactly. But this is what we're kind of seeing is there's a big gap. We spoke to young people who have said, we've applied to all these jobs and we haven't got a job, even though we've got the right skills. And then we've spoken to companies who said, we're trying to hire people and we can't find them. So something's going wrong there, where there's a missing link here, and we really want to try and be that missing link.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said there in terms of that mismatch of there are actually people on the ground. On both sides, there's willingness and appetite, but somehow they can't meet. We call it actually the mentality of abundance versus the mentality of the lack of, because what you often hear in the media is skills shortage and the lack of skills, the aging population, an absence of that skill set. Whereas the reality is there's an abundance of it, and being able to see the transferable skills and bringing people on that way. We talk about it in nuclear, but we talk about it in general
It's not a
for
skill
energy as well.
it's not a skill shortage, it's a communications failure because every time I see young people that want to work in this sector, but will they actually be given the right information and the right opportunities to do that? I'm not sure. And one other area that we've learned about is that often opportunities in nuclear and in energy are framed as a STEM opportunity, right? If you love science, here are really cool things that you could do in the space. There's a lot of people that are turned off by science and physics, particularly young women. They don't feel like it's for them. And this is where a lot of the work that we do actually goes into the geography curriculum. Now, in geography, there's a whole different cohort of young people that really care about the environment. Now, geography I consider as a type of science, but it's almost like a hidden science, right? And so students that normally aren't engaged in this come alive in geography. And when we introduce these topics to them in geography, it's really opening that, increasing the diversity of people that we're reaching. And I think it's really important that we take a cross-curricular approach and look at how energy can be engaging for all kinds of people. And we need all types of people working in the sector.
That's actually one of the most fascinating insights I've heard about this in recent times. It never occurred to me that geography could be a bit of a hidden Trojan horse, and getting people through other subjects. What we say is that in nuclear, for instance, half the people who work in nuclear are needed in nuclear don't have to be even having studied anything nuclear. A lot of the build phase that nuclear needs in the renaissance that is going through at the moment, it needs lots of other skills, everything from build welders to joiners to project managers. So I think you make a very relevant point. It's the more people are interested in the world of energy, all the plethora of skills that are needed in any company, that first choice being energy will make all the difference.
And one of the ways we try and do this is the way we work with businesses is that in the energy sector, we'll have a Megawatt team go into a school and facilitate this. But we invite STEM ambassadors from the organizations to come and support the day. And we actively encourage them not just to send the engineers, but send the admin staff, send the marketers, send the comms people, because our facilitator will be able to deliver the session and do all the technical energy talk. But they want to hear from people across the sector and the perspectives that they bring. They're not expecting someone like these people to come in and talk about energy. And that's where you need those role models of people where this isn't a typical person that they think is working in the sector. So we really try and encourage that diversity of role models as well to get everybody thinking, well, maybe that could be me.
Yeah, absolutely. That diversity and inclusion. Thinking about the future of energy, what's your predictions for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? Because I mean, especially with the development of AI and all these other things, like what does the workforce look like in 10 years is a very difficult question. But there's a lot of spaces where AI is going to be extremely disruptive, and whether or not there are opportunities in 10 years for these job roles, we don't know. But they are not going to be replacing the builders and the welders and the people actually creating our infrastructure. And in the UK, the energy workforce has to nearly double in the next 5 years. So it's a huge increase. And of that, 50% are school leaver age qualifications. So just apprenticeships and things like that. So I'm just talking from a UK perspective here, but the work isn't focused in London like a lot of traditional industries are. But the energy space is going to be distributed across the whole country. And we're going to have solar farms, onshore wind, and battery storage everywhere. So there's going to be work in the energy sector everywhere, especially as nuclear as well. Now that's moving towards this more SMR approach. There's probably a good likelihood that there's going to be more sites closer to other different kinds of communities. The workforce needs to be across the sector and across the whole country. It's a real good opportunity for people everywhere. And often people in these areas don't have a lot of opportunities where these energy infrastructure is going to be built. So I think the future of the sector is really exciting, really diverse. And if we want to make sure that happens, we have to start at school.
Absolutely. I guess all that diversity in terms of geography is another plus point towards the sustainability of the
Exactly. Yeah.
energy sector as a whole. Now we're going to come on to my favorite question. If you had a magic wand, what would you change about the energy sector as it is now?
I genuinely believe that if the Megawatt program was in every school in the UK, that we would not have a skill shortage in the energy sector. Like, I genuinely believe that. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. The difficulty is getting the support and the funding to make that happen. So if I, from a very selfish perspective, if I could
Yeah.
wave a magic wand, that would be what my answer is.
Yeah, I think obviously this is why you're spending all the hours that you spend
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that
on
is,
what you do. Yeah, this is that propels you.
yeah, for sure. I do genuinely believe that it would it would change the sector if that was.
Anything about the sector that how can the energy sector? I know there is not one coherent body, the energy sector, but what could companies do to help themselves as well?
In my experience, having talked to a lot of energy companies, from small solar farm companies to really big organizations, the small companies are agile enough and action orientated enough to take action. Whereas whenever I've interacted and talked to the larger organizations in the sector, it seems like the bulk of the work is forming strategies and plans and committees. And I see very little action at the end of it. Every few years there's a new strategy, but actually committing and taking a risk and putting funding behind something that maybe isn't fully shaped and fully planned, but you know is going to make a difference, and just taking that risk and actually putting some money behind it and giving it a go. Especially as someone who's run a business, I've learned that I can spend all the time in the world planning something, but I only know if it's going to work in the real world. And the best way to see that is iterate, test something, iterate, test something, iterate. And I often find that companies are too scared to do that and too scared to put something out into the world that isn't quite ready. And so nothing ever happens. So I think being a little bit more bold and brave with what you do. And, if it fails, it's fine. Just learn from it and try again.
Brilliant. I love that.